Chapter 4, Reading Python Code, Part 1. This chapter covers why knowing how to read code is important, how to ask Copilot to explain code, using functions to break down large problems, using variables to hang on to values, using if statements to make decisions, using strings to store and manipulate text, using lists to collect and manipulate many values. In Chapter 3, we used Copilot to write several functions for us. What are they good for? Maybe our money-made function could be part of a stock trading system, our isStrongPassword function could be used as part of a social networking website, or our bestword function could be used as part of some Scrabble AI. Overall, we've written some useful functions that could be part of larger programs. And we did this without writing much code ourselves or indeed understanding what the code even does. However, we believe that you need to understand at a high level what code does. Because this will require some time to learn, we've split this discussion over 2 chapters. In this chapter, we'll explain why reading code is important and introduce you to a Copilot feature that can help you understand the code. After that, we'll dive into the top 10 programming features you'll need to recognize to read most basic code produced by Copilot. We'll do the first 5 in this chapter and the remaining 5 in the next chapter. Don't worry. You've actually been informally introduced to all 10 already. We're just going to deepen your understanding of each one. Section 4.1. Why we need to read code. When we talk about reading code, what we mean is understanding what code does by looking at it. There are 2 such levels of understanding, and they're both important. The first level is being able to understand, line by line, what a program will do. This often involves tracing the values of variables as the code runs to determine exactly what the code is doing at each step. This is useful, but isn't the whole story. It's like following a cooking recipe step by step without knowing what the recipe is making or how its ingredients fit together. At the end, you might have a cake, but you might not be able to grasp why the cake turned out so well, or how you could come up with such a recipe yourself. You need to understand why the recipe, as a whole, is effective. So, that's the second level, determining the overall purpose of a program. That is, you need to be able to zoom out, away from each line, and understand what the program is doing at a high level. At the end of these 2 chapters, we want you to be able to begin to understand code from Copilot at both of these levels. We'll start focusing on that line-by-line understanding. But toward the end of this chapter and through the rest of the book, you'll start being able to look at a small chunk of code and determine its overall purpose. We can illustrate the difference between the 2 levels of reading code by referring back to our bestword function from Chapter 3, reprinted in the following listing.
Listing 4.1, bestword function for Scrabble.
A tracing description of what this program does is a description of each line. For example, we would say that we're defining a function called bestword that takes one parameter called wordlist. We have a variable called bestword that we start off as a string with no characters, otherwise known as the empty string. It's unfortunate that the function and this variable are both called bestword because it makes it trickier to refer to one or the other, but that's what Copilot gave us. We also have another variable, bestPoints, that we start at 0. Then, we have a for loop over each word in the word list. Inside the for loop, we call our numPoints helper function and store its return value in the points variable, and so on. We'll explain how we know what each line of code does over this chapter and the next. In contrast, a description of the overall purpose would be something like our docstring description. Return the word with the highest Scrabble point value from a list of words. Rather than refer to each line, this description refers to the code's purpose as a whole, explaining what it does at a high level. You'll come to an overall purpose level of understanding through a combination of practice with tracing and testing, and we hope you arrive there in full glory by the end of the book. Working at a tracing level generally precedes the ability to work at an overall purpose level. So in this chapter and the next, we're going to focus on the tracing level by understanding what each line of code does. There are 3 reasons why we want you to be able to read code. 1. To help determine whether code is correct. In Chapter 3, we practiced how to test the code that Copilot gives us. Testing is a powerful skill for determining whether code does the right thing, and we'll continue to use it throughout the book. But many programmers, the 2 of us included, will only test something if it seems plausibly correct. If we can determine by inspection that the code is wrong, then we won't bother to test it. We'll try to fix the code first. Similarly, we want you to identify when code is simply wrong without having to spend time testing it. the more code that you can identify as wrong, through quick tracing or honing your overall purpose skills, the more time you save testing broken code. 2. To inform testing. Understanding what the code is doing line by line is useful on its own, but it also helps turbocharge your ability to test effectively. For example, in the next chapter, you'll learn about loops, that they can cause your code to repeat 0 times, 1 time, 2 times, or as many times as needed. You'll be able to combine that knowledge with what you already know about testing to help you identify important categories of cases to test. 3. To help you write code. We know you want Copilot to write all of your code. We want that too. But inevitably, there will be code that Copilot just doesn't get right, no matter how much prompt engineering you do. Or maybe enough prompt engineering could finally cajole Copilot to write the correct code, but it would be simpler and faster to just do it ourselves. In writing this book, the two of us strive to have Copilot write as much code as possible. But, because of our knowledge of Python programming, we're often able to see a mistake and just fix it without going through any hoops to have Copilot fix it for us. Longer term, we want you to be empowered to learn more programming on your own, and having an understanding of Python is our way to provide a bridge for you from this book to other resources later. There is research evidence that being able to trace and explain code is prerequisite to being able to write code. Before we get to it, we need to be clear about the level of depth that we're striving for. We're not going to teach you every nuance of every line of code. Doing so would revert us back to the traditional way programming was taught prior to tools like Copilot. Rather, through a combination of Copilot tools and our own explanations, we're going to help you understand the gist, or overall goal of each line of code. You'll need more than this if you endeavor to write large portions of programs in the future. We're trying to target the sweet spot between "this code is magic" and "I know exactly how every line of the code works."